I am Jay Leeming, and this is the Crane Bag Podcast. Welcome. We are exploring the great epic of India, known as the Mahabharata. Our story so far? Well, there are two sets of cousins, and they are fighting over possession of a kingdom. One set of cousins, known collectively as the Pandavas, for they are all the sons of Pandu, they have lost their half of the kingdom in a rigged dice game, and as a result of that are living in the wilderness for 13 years. Those were the terms of the dice game. They are there with their one wife, who they share collectively, named Draupadi, who was born out of a fire. Meanwhile, back in the kingdom of Hastinapura, in the palace, the other set of cousins, the Kurus, are there, and Duryodhana and Dushasana in particular are there with Karna. And they have heard that Arjuna, one of the Pandavas, has gone into the mountains seeking sacred weapons, and they are curious. And so, of course, we take up our story. Welcome the stars and the moon to this story. We welcome the moss that grows between the rocks. We welcome the foot of the rabbit and the fly rubbing its hands together. We welcome unknown, mysterious, unnameable things. Joining me. Let us begin. Darkness, and in that darkness a light, the light from a candle. Karna was holding it, walking urgently through the corridors of the palace of Hastinapura. And he came to the throne room, and there was Duryodhana. "Duryodhana," Karna said, "I have heard rumors. My spies have told me that Arjuna has been seen moving north. He has left his brothers. He has gone into the mountains. What is he seeking?" "We must find out," said Duryodhana. "Let us go to the Brahmins." So the two of them walked through the corridors of that palace. And then they came to the room of vision. And there was a young Brahmin outside guarding the door. And he nodded, and he let them in. It was a circular room. In the center there was a hearth with a fire burning upon it. And the smoke rose up and went out through a hole in the ceiling, up out into the starlit sky. As their eyes became used to the darkness, they saw in the flickering light of that fire a Brahmin. He was sitting cross-legged beside the fire, with his eyes closed. He had a saffron robe on, and necklaces of sandalwood. They sat down around the fire, and they waited. After a while, the Brahmin opened his eyes. "You wish to know where Arjuna is and where he is going?" "Yes," said Duryodhana, "we wish to know. Is it possible? Can we see him?" "Yes," said the Brahmin, "it is possible. Close your eyes. Still your bodies. Find silence in your hearts and in your mind. Become calm, and you will see." And the Brahmin took a handful of dried leaves and cast them into the fire. And the smoke went up, and it was purple, and the smoke went up, and it was blue. And the smoke went up, and it was gray. "Now," he said, "open your eyes and see." And they looked into the smoke, the gray smoke rising. And soon in that smoke they saw shapes, boulders, stones, drifting snow, snow falling down in the mountains. And in the center of all of that drifting snow, they saw a man. "Arjuna," said Duryodhana. "Yes," said the Brahmin, "it is he." And they looked, and they saw Arjuna climbing up a snowy mountain, up the sides, higher and higher, as the snow whispered and came snaking down from the sky. And they saw Arjuna reach the top of that mountain. And he sat down on a boulder, and he shut his eyes. He breathed in, he breathed out, as the snow fell. Years seemed to pass. And then, suddenly, out of the snow there came a black boar. Arjuna heard it. He opened his eyes. He took an arrow from his quiver, fitted it to his bow, pulled the arrow back, and let it go. Shunk! It went right into the heart of that boar. The boar leapt once, twice, and then crashed down into the snow. Arjuna stood up. He walked to the boar. He bent down to take his arrow out, but as he did so, he saw there were 2 arrows in that boar. And he heard footsteps. And suddenly there was a large man standing over him, dressed in black rags. And the man said, "Do not touch this boar. This is my boar." "No," said Arjuna. "I saw this boar. I shot it with my arrow. This is my boar." "No," said the man. "My vision is clear. I tracked this boar here. I shot it with an arrow, and it is my boar." Arjuna took a step back. He took an arrow from his quiver and fitted it to his bow. "If you touch this boar, you will die." "Release your arrow," said the man. "I do not fear you. I do not fear death." And Arjuna released his arrow. Shoo! It went off into the snow. It missed the man entirely. "You can't touch me," said the man. Arjuna took a second arrow. He shot it towards the man. Shoo! It went off into the air. "Use up all your arrows," said the man. "Use them all up. You cannot touch me." Arjuna fired one arrow after the other. Shoo! 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 Off into the air. They missed the man completely. He threw his bow down. He took out his sword. He leapt towards the man. Gah! He slashed this way and that way, but he struck only the air. "You cannot find me anywhere," said the man. "Look, I am greater than you. Look, I am powerful." He took hold of Arjuna. He lifted him up over his head. "Look, you are a dry leaf and I am the wind. You are a dry leaf and I am a fire. I take out your breath." He touched Arjuna in the forehead. His breath left him. Arjuna was a limp rag in the man's hands. He threw Arjuna here, there. He threw him down into the snow. Arjuna looked up at the man and he saw... Where the man had been, there was someone else. Another man, tall, strong, with a bow and arrows strapped to his back, wearing a tiger skin. And around this man, there was a great circle of fire. "Shiva," said Arjuna. "Yes," said Shiva, "it is I." "Shiva, forgive me for striking you. I did not recognize you. I was confused." "I am well pleased with you, my child," said Shiva. "Ask from me a gift, and I will give it to you." Arjuna bent down with his hands together in the flickering light of those fires, and he said, "Shiva, I ask for Pashupata." "Pashupata," said Shiva. "The mountains tremble when they hear that name. The rivers stop for a moment in their flowing. The roots of this world quake. That is a weapon which can destroy the entire world. Is this truly what you desire, Arjuna?" "Yes," he said. "This is a weapon you can launch with an arrow, but you can launch also with your thoughts, with your mind. It is not enough simply to possess this weapon. You must be schooled in its use. All the secrets of how to deploy this weapon. Are you prepared to study to use this weapon?" "Yes," said Arjuna, "I am." Shiva reached down from his circle of fire, and with his little finger he touched Arjuna on the forehead. and Arjuna blacked out and fell down into the snow. The fires around Shiva thumped and crackled. He looked down at Arjuna, motionless in the snow. And then Shiva disappeared. Sometime later, Arjuna awoke. He sat up. The boar was gone. The snow had stopped falling. Had anything happened? Had it all been a dream? He was not sure. But inside him there was a tingle, a faint buzzing that had not been there before, something he could almost remember. He took up his bow and his arrows. He strapped them to his back. He stepped away from that boulder. He began to walk down the mountain. He walked for a long while, but then he came to a cave in the side of that mountain. Snow was beginning to fall again. So he went into that cave, exhausted and worn out, and he slept. And sleep and dreaming passed over him, like the wings of a great bird. And he dreamed of a fire crackling, and he warmed his hands over that fire. And then he awoke. There was a bright light in the mouth of the cave, stunning, dazzling light. The sun? Perhaps it was dawn. He shielded his eyes with his hand. He staggered forward towards that light. The light made long shadows out of Arjuna's body and of the stones in the cave. He blinked. He looked into that light. He staggered out into it. And there was a great chariot. A chariot made of fire and of gold. Gold that was fire, fire that was gold. High above there were still stars in the sky. And there was a great man in this chariot, so it seemed. And this being said, Arjuna, I am Indra, the king of the gods. Shiva has given you Pashupata, but now you must go to my world to learn the use of this weapon. Come, child, come with me. And Indra reached out his hand. Arjuna stepped forward, one step, then another. He reached out. He took Indra's hand in his own, and in that moment, whew, the fire in that room of vision went out, and Duryodhana and Karna sat there, blinking into the darkness. The smoke went up through the hole in the roof. And Duryodhana said, You must obtain such weapons also. Yes, said Karna. I will leave at dawn. And the two of them stood up, thanked the Brahmin. They left the room of vision and walked through the corridors of the palace. The Brahmin sat beside the fire. He watched them go, and then he closed his eyes. Far away, Draupadi was sitting in a meadow with Bhima beside her. It was a beautiful day. The wind was blowing through the trees. And after a while, that wind blew a golden flower down into Draupadi's lap. What a beautiful flower, she said. Yes, said Bhima, It is beautiful. It has been brought here by the wind. And as I am the son of the wind, I will follow this wind and bring back for you another golden flower. So Bhima stood up and walked into the trees. The wind blew, a warm, generous wind, whispering through the leaves of the trees. The birds were singing. And after a while he came to a path, and he walked along this path deeper into the forest. And then he came to a spot where there was a large, well, it looked like a tree, but it was covered in hair, and it was blocking the trail. And he looked to his left, and he saw that this tree-like thing was connected to what he thought was a hill, but in fact it was a large sleeping monkey. An immense monkey, and his tail was over the trail there, over the path, so no one could pass. And Bhima said, "Monkey, please, wake up, good sir. Your tail is blocking the path. Please move your tail, so travelers like myself can get by." And the monkey opened his eyes and said, "Oh, sir, I am a very old monkey, and I am very tired. You are young, you look very strong. Why don't you just walk around my tail?" "Well," said Bhima, "the thing is, this is a public path. There could be old people walking here, Brahmins could walk here, and you are blocking the path. Please just move your tail." And the monkey said, "I'm sorry. Like I said, I am very old, thousands of years old, in fact. But I give you permission to lift up my tail. Move it out of the way yourself. Go ahead, it's all right." So Bhima bent down, put his arms around that tail, and tried to lift it up. But he could not do it. It was heavy. This was a heavy, heavy tail. He tried again. Could not do it. He summoned all the power of the wind god, his father, Vayu, and he tried again, lifting that tail. And he put it down, sweating, and he said, "I cannot lift your tail." And suddenly a light seemed to go on in his head, and he turned and looked at the monkey, and he said, "You are no ordinary monkey. God, if that is what you are, unseen power, magical being that you are, please tell me your name. I am Bhima, one of the Pandavas. I wish to know who you are." And the monkey said, "I am Hanuman, the son of the wind god Vayu." "You are Hanuman?" said Bhima. "Himself, the very one?" "Yes," said the monkey. "Well, I am Bhima, and my father is Vayu, the god of the wind as well. We are brothers. How fortunate that in my life I have been given this opportunity to set eyes on you, Hanuman. Are you really he, the one who fought with Rama against the demon Ravana?" "Yes," said Hanuman, "I am. Back in the second age of the world." And he began to tell Bhima his story. He told him how Rama and his queen Sita had ruled wisely and well in their kingdom, and how one day, when they were in the wilderness, Sita had been stolen away by the demon king Ravana with 100 heads, and he took her away to his secret palace. And how many other events happened, events happening like notes in a great piece of music. And how finally, at the end of this story, well, Hanuman and his army of monkeys had built a great bridge of stone over the sea. And going across that bridge, they had stormed the palace of the demon king Ravana with his 100 heads. And together with Rama, he had defeated the demon king and freed Sita from his clutches, so that Rama and Sita were reunited, and peace and harmony were brought once again to the world. So Hanuman told this whole story to Bhima. "That was a long time ago," said Hanuman, "and that war brought an end to the world's second age." "The second age of the world?" said Bhima. "Tell me, how many ages are there of the world?" "There are 4, said Hanuman. "There are 4 ages of the world. In each one, Dharma is lessened. At the beginning, it's a golden age. All things go well. Men, women, animals, they all live in harmony. There is no need for prayer. There is no need for offerings. Things are not simply thought about and done later. They are simply done. Peace and prosperity and generosity are the order of the day. But over time, men, women, and animals, they forget Dharma, which is the way of the world. They become less generous and more selfish. Dharma can be likened to a table with 4 legs. At the beginning, in the first age of the world, it has all 4 legs, and it stands strong. In the second age of the world, well, there are only 3 legs. The table is a little more wobbly. That was the age in which I fought with Ravana, in which I knew the great Rama and Sita as well. That age was brought to a close by that great war we fought against the Demon King. Every age is brought to the end with a great battle. And now you and I, well, we sit here in this forest in the 3rd age of the world. And a great battle is coming. Yes, said Bhima, a great battle is coming. Who will fight in this battle? I think you know, said Hanuman. And what will happen next, said Bhima. What will happen next, said Hanuman. Well, it's hard to say. But eventually the 3rd age of the world will be brought to a close, and the 4th age will begin, the age of Kali, when men, women, animals, all things are governed by greed and selfishness. Humans will forget the gods. They will be unkind to each other. War will happen every day. Death, starvation, great disasters will come. And then the world will end, but it will end only to begin again. What must we do, said Bhima. Preserve Dharma, said Hanuman. Preserve the harmony and order of all things. You feel it in your heart. You feel it in your hands and in your voice. You know when things are right. Follow that music, the music of Dharma, singing inside the seed and the cloud and the stars. Thank you, said Bhima. But is it possible for you to help us in some way? We face great enemies, horrible adversaries. Is there some way you can help us? Ah, Bhima, said Hanuman, I am flattered that you should ask, but I am an old monkey. Thousands of years have passed since I fought against the great 100-headed demon. No, I cannot help you in any intense physical way. However, I will give my form to the flag of Arjuna, my shape of the great monkey, so when he goes into battle I will be there on that flag, and I will give my great and terrible roar to the conch shell which he will blow at the beginning of this war, and that sound will strike fear into all of his enemies. In these ways I will help you. Thank you, Hanuman, said Bhima. Thank you. But I have one more request. Please, may I see your divine form? Just once, for a moment. Ah, said Hanuman, yes, you may see my divine form, if you are prepared. Bang! And suddenly there was a great thundercloud that went up, and bang! It looked like Hanuman was 1,000 feet tall, gigantic, this huge, gigantic monkey, and birds went flying away through the forest at seeing this immense monkey, and Bhima looked up at him, and the hair on his back stood on end. Look at you! You were large! You were divine! Oh, Hanuman praises to you! And he bent down, kneeling before him. And then a moment later, zoop! Hanuman became his former shape. Just the shape of an immense 1,000-year-old monkey. And the birds settled down back into the trees. Thank you, Hanuman. Thank you, said Bhima. But tell me, how long will you remain on this earth? And Hanuman said, Rama gave me a gift. My good friend, the great hero, the divine being Rama, gave me a gift, and it was this, that I should remain alive on this earth so long as humans, men and women, so long as the bards of this world remember my story. So my story is still remembered, and so I am still here in this beautiful forest. But now I must get some sleep. The tree you were seeking is not far away. You will find it quite easily. Goodbye, Bhima. Goodbye. And then Hanuman lay down closed his eyes and slept. And Bhima looked at him for a moment, and then walked further up the path. And before long he came to a tree covered in golden blossoms. He reached out, took hold of one of these blossoms, and plucked it from its branch. And then he turned and walked down the path, through the forest, back towards the meadow. And after a while he reached that meadow. The wind was still blowing, warm and sweet through the trees. And there was Draupadi sitting in that meadow. And Bhima went to her and said, "Here, Draupadi, this flower is for you." Draupadi held it in her hands, and she said, "Thank you, Bhima. Thank you." Now far away from this forest there was a desert. And at the edge of that desert, in some low hills, there was a cave. And in this cave there lived a man, and his name was Parashurama. Now Parashurama was very old, and he had long ago sworn to destroy the Kshatriyas, the warriors of this earth, for he hated them. And one day, through the whispering winds of that desert, through the blowing sand, there came a man walking. He looked like a Brahmin. He had a saffron-colored robe on, a white string going from his shoulder down to his hip. He had beads, necklaces around his neck. And he came and bowed down before Parashurama. And he said, "I have come knowing of your greatness. I have come and I wish to serve you." So Parashurama accepted this man, this glorious, beautiful, strong Brahmin, unusually strong for a Brahmin. And this man helped Parashurama. Day after day he fetched water for him and cooked for him and helped him in all his daily tasks. This went on for an entire year, and each night the stars turned a little more in the sky. And the rains came and the rains went away. And this Brahmin was very helpful and kind to Parashurama. And after a year passed, Parashurama said, "Young man, you Brahmin who have served me so well, you have done well this past year. I wish to give you a gift. Ask from me what you desire." And this strong, beautiful, powerful Brahmin looked at him and said, "I desire Pashupata." "What?" said Parashurama. "You desire this weapon which can destroy the world, which originates with Shiva himself?" "Yes," said the Brahmin, "that is what I desire." And Parashurama said, "It is strange that you, a Brahmin, should desire this weapon. But I have given my word, and I will not break it. Here." And he took a scrap of bark, and he handed it to the Brahmin. "Read, but read quickly. The spell is written on this bark, but it will disappear as you look at it." And the Brahmin looked, and it was true. His eyes ate up the words, and they vanished, and then it was only a scrap of bark. Parashurama took hold of it and tossed it away. "It is nothing now. The spell, the mantra is in your mind. or it is nowhere. And now I must sleep. I am over 800 years old, and I am beginning to slow down. So the Brahmin sat in the lotus posture, and Parashurama bent down and put his head in the lap of the Brahmin, and he began to sleep. And the wind blew across the desert, and the clouds moved slowly across the sky, and the shadows crept towards the night. And this Brahmin sat in the lotus posture, strong and firm. But as he did so, there came a snake. A black snake came slithering out of the sand. It came right up to this Brahmin's leg. It smelled the meat of him. It opened its jaws and it took a large bite out of his thigh. The Brahmin did not cry out. He was strong. He took the pain inside, and tears of pain welled up in his eyes. And then the snake slithered away. The Brahmin hadn't tasted so good after all. And the snake descended into the depths of the earth. But one tear of pain fell from the Brahmin down onto the sleeping face of Parashurama, and he awoke. He opened his eyes. What's this? Something has happened. Something has awoken me. And he sat up and he looked at the leg of the Brahmin, and blood was seeping through his robes. What has happened? And the Brahmin said, A snake came while you were sleeping. It bit me in the thigh. But I did not wish to wake you, so I did not cry out. You are no Brahmin, said Parashurama. Only a Kshatriya, a warrior, would show such idiotic courage. Tell me your true name. My name, the Brahmin said, my name is Karna. Karna! I curse you, Karna! I have given you Pashupata. But in the moment that you most need this weapon, it will fail you. Yes, your mind will be a blank. Go! Leave me! Go! So he yelled, and Karna turned and went running away into the desert. And Karna crossed that desert. And a long while later he came to some grasslands, and nestled in among those grasses, near some trees, there was a village. And in the center of the town there was a square, and there was a beggar with only one arm, dressed in rags. Karna walked straight to him, and he said, Sir, you are in need of better clothes. Here, take my robes. And Karna took off his Brahmin's robes and put them down at the man's feet. I will wear your rags, Karna said. For me, the man said, looking at the beautiful robes, for a Brahmin colored saffron, orange, beautiful. Yes, these are for you, said Karna. The man took off his rags and put on the beautiful robes. And Karna put on the muddy, torn, stained rags of the beggar. And he walked away and walked through the town. And after a while he came to some little girls playing in the sand beside a tree. He walked to them and he took off his necklace made of sandalwood. And he held it out to one of the little girls and said, Here, you are in need of some jewelry. This necklace is for you. She marveled at it. She put it around her neck. Thank you, she said. Thank you. And Karna stood up and walked on. And after a while, Karna came to the edge of this village. There was the river again, and there was a bridge over it. And beside this bridge, down by the water, there was a boy throwing stones into the water. Karna went to him in his beggar's rags. And he took the white string that every Brahmin wears. It goes from the shoulder down to the hip. He took it off and he said, Here, my friend, here is a string for you. Perhaps you can make something interesting out of it. The boy took the string. "Ah, a string," he said. "Cool." And he began to twist it around one of the rocks he held to make a necklace. "Thank you," the boy said. "You're welcome," said Karna. And he walked out onto that bridge, leaving the village behind him. But when he got to the middle of the bridge, with the water flowing beneath him, he looked up at the sun in the sky, and he said, "Father, I have sought a great weapon, and I have failed. Perhaps I have been too ambitious. I see you giving your honey light to the world. I see how generous you are. I will learn from you. I will be generous also, Father. For here and now I swear, henceforth I will give all I can to everyone who asks." Karna stood there for a moment with his eyes closed, drinking in the golden warmth of the sun. And then he walked across that bridge and set out for home. Meanwhile, in the forest, the Pandavas were sitting around a crackling fire. It was morning, and a wind was blowing through the trees, and the birds were singing. And on this day, through the forest, there came walking a man. He was dressed in a blue robe, and he came towards their fire. Yudhishthira stood up. He recognized him. "Markandeya," he said. "Markandeya, how good to see you here." "Yes," said Markandeya, "and it's good to see you as well." And Nakula said, "Are you in fact Markandeya, the great seer? People say you are thousands of years old." "It is I," said Markandeya. "Now how are you all doing here in the forest?" And he sat down with them at that fire. And they all told him their stories. Draupadi spoke, and Sahadeva, and Bhima, and Yudhishthira. They all told him their stories. And then Markandeya said, "Arjuna has received the great weapon Pashupata from Shiva." "What?" said Yudhishthira. "Yes," said Markandeya. "He has received from Shiva the weapon that can destroy the world. He has gone on to Indra's realm to learn the use of this weapon." And Bhima said, "Aha! This is a good thing. This is a good thing. We will destroy our enemies." But Yudhishthira was quiet. This weapon can destroy the world. If Arjuna has obtained this weapon, then surely Duryodhana, Dushasana, and Karna, they will try to obtain weapons of equal power. If it comes to a war and these weapons are used, Markandeya, tell me, can the earth survive?" And Markandeya said, "I do not know. I can tell you only what I remember, from a long, long time ago, from a time so long ago that perhaps it has yet to occur." You see, once there was nothing. Once there was nothing at all. There was only ash and smoke and black skies. Everything had been destroyed. Every forest, every town, every city, pulverized by war and by great fires that swept across the earth. Hurricanes, great storms, endless winters, and then burning fires came. They pulverized everything on this earth. There was not a bone left that had not been reduced to ash or to dust. But somehow, still, I survived. And so I crawled across this bleak landscape of ash, of nothingness, beneath the black skies with the wind howling and shrieking around me. Crawling forward, my hands caked with ash, the ashes from dead humans and animals and trees and pulverized cities. Secure in my own breath alone, I crawled across the landscape. I don't know how long it was, But in a certain moment, in a certain day or night, in a certain time, I looked and I saw a fig tree blossoming on a hill. I couldn't believe it. A fig tree. It was radiant. It seemed to be glowing. And as I crawled closer, I saw that there was a young boy sitting beneath it. What are you doing here?" I said. "Who are you?" The boy did not answer, but he smiled. His eyes were radiant. His whole body seemed to shine. He looked at me, and then he opened his mouth, and a great whistling wind came across the earth, streaming towards his mouth, and suddenly I was swept up into that wind, lifted off the ground. And suddenly this boy was immensely tall. I was only up at his knees, and then higher the wind pulled me, higher and higher up towards his mouth. In I went into the darkness, boom, down. I closed my eyes, bam, I came down, and I landed in a field of grass. I heard a bird singing, and then another. I opened my eyes. The sky was blue. Clouds were blowing across it. It was a beautiful day. I sat up. Not far from me, there were many fruit trees. There was a river, and past the river there was a village. I walked across the river. I walked into the village. There were people there, people selling bread, and they had clothing for sale and fabrics, and there were people arguing, and chickens in the streets, and goats, and all the tumult and happiness of life was happening in this village. Well, I wandered for a long time through the world. There were orchards, there were cities, there were villages. Finally, I met a beautiful woman at a well. I went there one day, getting water to drink, and we looked at each other and fell in love. And we were married, and I settled down with her in that particular village. And we had many children together. And I grew older, and every year the moon shone down, and every year the stars shone, and the birds sang. And there was laughter, and there was sorrow, and there was beauty, and there was music. So the years went by. I had children. Soon they got married as well. They went off to have families of their own. I had a garden in back with a mango tree there. I looked at that mango tree, and I said to myself, I will travel the world. I will see what there is to see. So on a day like any other, really, I said goodbye to my wife, and I traveled the world. And I traveled across the seas, and I traveled through many villages. And everywhere I went, I looked at what I saw and took it into my heart. I heard birds singing. I saw farmers taking care of their cows and their sheep. I saw armies preparing for a great battle. I heard musicians playing lovely music. An old man with a stick, 3 children playing with a golden ball. Frogs in the swamps, fishermen mending their nets by the side of the sea. Horses running in fields. I traveled for many years. And I saw many things. And finally, years later, I returned to my village. And my wife welcomed me, and my children and my grandchildren as well. It was the birthday of one of my grandchildren. We had a great party in our house. Everyone came, friends, relatives. They brought food of all kinds. Musicians played music. It was a beautiful day. And the children sang, and we all sang, and we told stories of all that we had seen in this world. Stories about the past and the future, and all it is and shall be, and some things that never will come. So we sang and we laughed and we danced, and then I thought to myself, after all my travels, I would like to eat a mango from my own mango tree. I'll bet they are just ripe. And so I excused myself, walked out of the house and across the garden. The wind began to blow as I walked, and I came to the great mango tree, looked up at it, resplendent, beautiful fruits there. And I reached out to take hold of one of those mangoes, but as I did so, the wind snarled and rose and whispered and shrieked and lifted me up off the ground. I went flying up beside the mango tree, higher and higher. No, I said. I looked down. There was my house, getting smaller and smaller. No, higher and higher. I went up into the sky, and then a great black hole swallowed me. I closed my eyes, whoomp, and I landed in a field of ash. I opened my eyes. The skies were black. A furious wind ran ragged around the sky. I sat up and I looked. There was the fig tree, and there was the young boy standing beneath it, smiling. He looked at me with great kindness in his eyes, and then he said, "How did you sleep?" When have you been humbled by forces greater than yourself? That's what this part of the story asks us to contemplate. When have we been humbled by forces greater than ourselves? I think of standing underneath Yosemite Falls in California. It was the end of my training as a ranger early in the summer, and a bunch of us went and stood beneath that flourishing cascade of cold water falling from, I forget the number, 2,000 feet above off the cliff face, and just shattering down around us. Cold water from way up there coming down. Bam! Well, that was joyous. Maybe that's not quite the humbling I'm looking for, but it was a force greater than me, that's for sure. But a mountain will do it. If you've ever climbed a mountain, a good hill will do it. You climb up that thing and you get tired. This is bigger than me. I guess even the smallest things. Getting cold hands in the winter. Oh, it's cold. I got to put gloves on. Or sleep, right? Hunger. But we're used to these things. But they are minor visitations of the same sort of experience, of being humbled by a force greater than ourselves. That happens over and over in this part of the story. It happens to Arjuna when he meets Shiva on top of the mountain. It happens to Karna, humbled by Parashurama there. And, of course, Bhima, humbled by Hanuman as well, the monkey god. So in most of those cases, it's a being beyond the human. Arjuna encounters Shiva, the destroyer. Just to back up here, we're in the Hindu myth world, where the three primary gods are Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the creator, the preserver, and the destroyer. Now, there are thousands of gods after them, but those are sort of the big three, as much as there can be a big three. And he goes to the top of this mountain, and there he encounters Shiva, who destroys. And Arjuna, who's this big warrior guy, is humbled. His skills that he's worked so hard to attain do not succeed, cannot overpower this simple hunter. And in the same way, Bhima cannot lift the tail of Hanuman, this monkey. He can't lift the tail of a monkey, Bhima, who's supposed to be so super strong. So the humbling is important, and I think many of us have experienced that from other humans. You know, you can be humbled by whatever, a teacher, something like that. Another person can do something better than you. But I think what's important here is it's a contact with something beyond the human. It's when you reach the limit of your powers that you are ready to contact something else. When you're completely exhausted, when you've spent every possible solution has been tried, when every all of your energy has been spent, then you are open. You are not master of the situation anymore. You are weak, and therefore you can connect with the God in a way that you could not before. Because ego is the enemy, of course, of surrender to a larger force, whatever it is. And one way to break that down is through physical limitation, and being sort of overthrown physically. You cannot go on. Or just the skills you've done, are not enough, not sufficient. It's when we're empty that the Spirit comes, that the God comes and is like, okay, here I am for you. Jesus knew that going into the desert, right? I'm going to confront something. So that's the kind of moment we're in, and it's a moment far from us, I would say. Or we try to keep it far from our emotional lives, certainly in America today, America today, and in much of the modern world, we like to be in control. That's why we love cars so much. We're in charge, we do whatever we want, and then the glacier melts, and we're not in charge as much as we thought. We aren't really in charge as much as we think. But even as I'm saying these things, I'm feeling too knowledgeable, too in control, But it's a podcast and I'm saying stuff. I got to learn this too, of course. These are just insights I've gathered, I suppose. But we could also remember that many cultures around the world in the past and today seek out this connection deliberately. With us, it happens by accident often. When there's trouble, when there's tragedy, you get in touch with something bigger than yourself. But many cultures deliberately sought that through what is called, quote unquote, a vision quest in the Native American tradition, but in other traditions as well. The Celts or the folks in the Middle East, you go on retreat, you leave what the community you know well, you leave safety, and you go somewhere else. Though, of course, often you are guided by elders who know what they're doing and have been out there before. So many cultures see that as crucial to the health of the community, to have that type of experience where you reach your limit and you confront something beyond yourself. We do not value that, and the results of our decision, of our value system, are all around us. Because that world beyond us, those greater than human powers, are not, we do not commune with them regularly in any way, except through accidentally. And as the result is all kinds of, it's a kind of knowledge we don't have. It's a wisdom we don't have, that connection with the wild, for example, with God, we might say, in another mood, with unseen greater powers than ourselves. So this type of humbling is very valuable, and it's how these characters in this story move forward. So I invite you, dear listener, to contemplate those moments in your own life. And I invite you, as always, to find your own way into this story. Don't listen to me roaring on with all these thoughts and things. I mean, sure, do listen, but your own connection to this story is a more certain way in than anything I could say. So disregard everything I'm saying if you want to, and I would, as usual, invite you into the story in your own way. Find a moment, an image which jumps out at you, and don't let it get squelched by all my word play and word stuff and my own thoughts. So we get this humbling there, which they all experience in the forest, which I love. And then we also get, what else? Karna is humbled by Parashurama, who is human, sort of. Not really. He doesn't really present as a god, but he is in fact an incarnation of Vishnu. So here's the backstory on him. So again, the three gods, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. Vishnu's the one who preserves things, who makes sure they don't get destroyed too soon. And when the world is in trouble, he manifests as a being, sometimes an animal, sometimes a human, and works to save the world, so to speak, works to prevent the destruction of the world. And in the larger story, which we're engaged in, which we're in the middle of, the Mahabharata, he is present in that story throughout as Krishna, who's a human king, but is also an incarnation of Vishnu, an avatar of Vishnu. But then we also get Parashurama, who is also an incarnation of Vishnu. Hey, no big problem with that. Why not? He's a god after all. He can be incarnated multiple times in the same time and place. Parashurama, his deal is very briefly, his goal is to prevent the Kshatriyas, so the warriors, from going beyond their power. So the warriors are supposed to keep people safe. They make sure that you can walk on the roads at night and thieves don't beat you up and steal your money. They make sure a kingdom is safe and has borders and is not overrun by another kingdom. But in Parashurama's view, they use their powers to excess, and they start reveling in their power too much. And instead of just keeping the peace, they become the causes of violence and destruction themselves. Well, these stories are always contemporary, right? So I'm listening to this. I'm thinking of Black Lives Matter. I'm thinking of police violence against the African-American community, right? Did you hear that? What we stumbled into? I didn't plan this. What we just stumbled into. So the Kshatriyas, the warriors, whose job is to keep the peace, are going beyond their usual limits, and they are becoming the causes of violence and destruction and bloodshed in the world. And Parashurama, his goal, and he succeeds. He succeeds at this 21 times. He completely destroys the class of warriors, although he spares a few each time, and they return. And then he gets rid of them again. Now, of course, his energy is, again, very yang, if I can use that phrase, from Chinese philosophy. Not yin, not the dark, receptive side of life, but the active, bang, 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 boom, go get 'em side. So he's combating the warriors in a way he's fighting fire with fire, it seems to me. He's got a big battle axe he uses, and he, causes them all kinds of problems. So it's different than saying, relax, you guys, do some yoga, bake some bread, write some poetry. That would be another route to go, and is perhaps my way in this world. But Parashurama, he takes a more, aggressive stance, and he wipes them out 21 times. In his role as an incarnation of Vishnu. So Karna meets up with him and, of course, is in disguise as a Brahmin. Now, we've seen a conflict between these two classes of the world, of the people of the world in this story before. Quite a bit earlier, there was that scene with the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas at Draupadi's ceremony where the winner of the contest would marry the one who won the contest, the contest for her hand in marriage. And Arjuna was masquerading as a Brahmin, and people were all upset that a Brahmin would take on this task to do this big archery feat. So that's a theme running through this whole story. And in fact, when Draupadi is born out of the fire, again, reaching back into the early parts of this story, if you remember, she's born out of a fire, an offering her father's making, and there's a voice which speaks and says that she shall be the ruin of the Kshatriyas. She will be the cause of their downfall. And how does she do that? How is she part of that? Well, she, of course, is dragged by the hair. She's humiliated in front of everyone by Dushasana there in the throne room. And to make up for this, the quote-unquote good guys, the Pandavas, go to war against their cousins to avenge that act of humiliation, among other things. But that's over and over taken as the key example. All right, so that's what's going on with Parashurama when Karna comes to him and is humbled by him. Parashurama, who is, I forget the numbers, he's super old. He's like, either he lives forever or he's like 800 years old or something like that. So kind of an amazing story there. And then, well, what else? Let's go to Markandeya, yes. Now, I've spoken about this story before on this podcast, but I love this story of the universe kept alive in the belly of a child. And that child is, in fact, Vishnu, another incarnation of Vishnu, preserving the universe when, in fact, everything is oblivion and death and destruction. And I have not embellished this story. The Mahabharata was written down, roughly between 500 BC and 500 Common Era, 500 AD, Common Era. And in that time, this is how they envisioned the end of the world, is this ash and smoke and nothing left. And I remember being in Bali and talking with the sons of a medicine man there, a medicine man named Ketut Lier. He had a son who was a doctor, and then that man had a son as well. And I spoke with both of them. And they talked about how they work hard to keep patients alive, But if the patient does not survive, they know, or if they do survive, if they get better or if they die, it is the will of God. That's how they expressed it to me. So it's reassuring to think that the universe is somehow okay and in the belly of Vishnu, despite the fact that there is just widespread Armageddon happening. The universe is preserved. And that's a comforting thought. But coming from a Christian culture, as I do, my next thought is, well, great, I can just hang out. I can just eat donuts on the couch all day, and Vishnu's got it all covered. But in fact, the understanding here is that you need to work as hard as you always did, but in the end, it's not entirely up to you. Your efforts are part of achieving things and accomplishing things, but the divine works through you as well as outside of you. Your efforts are part of that picture. It's like a tapestry in which we are each threads, but we are also weavers as well. And that's hard to picture, hard to imagine. But so shouldn't it be that way, that the universe and the structure of it are hard to imagine? And as part of that tapestry, let's not forget, we have Draupadi in the meadow, enjoying the warm breeze and the flowers drifting on that breeze. Part of me wants to get her to do something else, to ask her, to invite her in this story. Bhima's gone for an hour. He comes back, and she's still there. She's in the meadow. Doesn't she have something to do? Well, yes. But in the backdrop of the story is all death and oblivion, Armageddon, apocalypse. That's what the story is contemplating in this moment. Arjuna seeks a weapon and receives it that will destroy the world. Karna attempts to do the same and fails. And Yudhishthira and his brothers, Nakula, Sahadeva, and Bhima too at that point, they hear a story from Markandeya about the end of the world. And I have not embellished this. This is what the Sanskrit text says from about 2,000 years ago. That's the kind of oblivion it imagines, where everything's completely destroyed. So against that backdrop, having one character, one person, one woman who's getting a little time to herself in a field to enjoy the grasses and the sunlight and the beautiful flowers, well, that doesn't seem like a bad thing. Somebody's got to enjoy this world before it's all taken away. So may we all have that moment. May we all get a moment like that in our lives, certainly, and perhaps in each day, to pause and to contemplate the beauty of what is around us. And I would just add some wind. Wind streaming through the trees. Wind is often connected with divine powers. In the Greek world, the wind flowing through the leaves of an oak tree, that was seen as the voice of Zeus. Wind does what it wants. In this world of fixed things in which we live, in cities, houses, cars that we drive, there are trees, of course, there's slugs in the corners, there's frogs and squirrels, but there's also the wind. It's so comforting to think of that, the wind which does what it wants and lifts a plastic bag up into the air and throws it down again and then puts it up in a tree. Playful, whimsical, beautiful wind. Unstoppable. Like a child. Like a wise old woman. Like a riddle you can't quite figure out. There it is, rustling in the dry leaves. There it is, ruffling your hair. I'm Jay Leeming, and if you're seeking more stories, you can find them on my website, which is jayleeming.com, JAYLEEMING.com. And if you are able to support this work of getting stories out into the world, please do so. You can do that via Patreon, www.patreon.com/storyjl. That's very helpful to me in these wild and uncertain times to support this work of getting stories out there. May you hold these stories in your hearts. May you remember them. May they nourish you in some way. May they be a benefit to all of us as we journey through this world. Thank you, and take care.